Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for tuning in. This is my YouTube channel. I'm Mimi Marie, and I'm here today with Roslyn Saunders. I'm so excited to have her here to share her story. The purpose of this series is to share people's stories who have gone through something traumatizing, tragedies, struggles, addiction, and who have done the work to overcome and have gone on to really create something in their lives. And many of the stories are turning out to be, people have gone on to do their work and their purpose in the realm of what they've recovered from. So I'm super excited to have Roslyn Saunders on today. The universe of social media brought us together.
It did.
Yeah, so thank you so much for saying yes to being here. And we'll just go ahead and have you quickly introduce yourself, and then we'll jump right in.
Okay, so thank you. First of all, thank you very much for having me on the podcast, and how synchronistically this has come together and very easily. So I'm very grateful to our, she's not really a friend of mine, mutual person on social media for you interviewing her. And then I picked up on that and thought, oh, wow, I'd love Mimi to interview me. So thank you. I'm honoured to be here. When you say introduce myself, do you want me to start with where I'm from, what I'm doing?
I was just thinking, like, I didn't even say what you do. Well, what really, the work that you're doing is in codependency, recovery from codependency. And I have your book here, which I would love to just dive into a couple of the key topics that I found in there, but I'm sure you're going to touch on it anyway. But I was really drawn to your work and the topic of codependency because it is a piece of my story as well. Mm-hmm. And it is such an elusive kind of thing. Like, I didn't realize that was part of my story until I got sober from alcohol myself. And then I started to realize, oh, there's this kind of like this other thing going on. So I think it's really an important topic to bring to the recovery community because it does it lies underneath and it's sneaky. So you're obviously very educated and knowledgeable on the topic, and this is the work that you're doing with other people. So tell us a little bit more about, let's start with how you got into this work.
Okay, thank you. So I'll go back to, thanks, Mimi. So I'll go back to, I was born in New Zealand. I now reside in Brisbane, Australia, but I was born in New Zealand in a tiny town there. Both my parents were addicts. By that, what I mean is my father was an alcoholic and my mother was addicted to prescription medication to manage the alcoholism. So she was taking prescription medication, so she became addicted to that. Both of them also smoked between 60 and 80 cigarettes a day each. So Wow. They were looking outside of themselves to manage their emotional lives that took them to addiction. I might add that my parents were very enterprising business people, very successful. However, they couldn't manage that. So my father went to the alcohol. My mother would take more and more prescription medication. I remember she would drive us down to the small pharmacy in our small town. She'd double park. I'd run into the pharmacist, of course, who we all knew in the town, with the little brown bottle. He'd fill it up. Then 3 days later, we'd do the same thing, fill up the little brown bottle. So this went on. So I grew up with this. I now can see that I grew up with two addicted parents because I believe codependency is the mother of all addictions. And as you said, sits underneath the addictions that we choose, the drug of choice. So that's what I grew up in. My father was dead at 47 with alcoholism. They said on his death certificate, it said cirrhosis of the liver. However, I know that underneath that was addiction, alcoholism. So and then my mother had a stroke at 55. So my father was dead at 47 when I was 15. My mother had a stroke at 55 due to her lifestyle, the smoking, etc. And she was institutionalized, and then she died at 60. Now, she was a very educated, very go-getter woman. But this is what my point is, this is what addiction can do to us.
Yes.
So I carried on then after my father died when I was 15. Of course, I met a boy when I was about 18, and surprise, surprise, he was an alcoholic. I mean, that was perfect for me. That was my normal. I didn't know any different. So then I got married. We got married when I was 20, and then we went on and had 4 children, doing the exact same blueprint as what I'd grown up in. It was the same arguments. It was me sitting there crying about the drinking, not my mother. So I replaced my husband with my father. And I might add here that I don't drink or take pills or use needles. So I didn't use any substances. However, my husband was my drug. He was addicted to the alcohol, but I was addicted to him. And a lot of my purpose of why I do what I do today, Mimi, is because I was just as addicted to people. Addiction is absolutely epidemic out there, but people don't identify it as an addiction. Yeah. So we went on and had 4 children, and then things were really getting topsy-turvy in New Zealand. So I decided that I was leaving the marriage, and then my husband said, look, I was leaving the town as well. I'd outgrown the town and I wanted to get out. So my husband said, so we decided to shift to Australia. And in my ignorance, and I look back, of course, and in my blindness, I thought, well, when we shift to Australia, everything will be rosy. My husband said, I want our family. I want us to get together. And I thought that meant that he won't have the boys down at the pub in the corner. He won't have the rugby club rooms and all of the things that had become our normal life. Of course, 2 weeks after shifting here, he found, well, of course, there's a pub on every corner, but we brought the whole scenario over to Australia, as you will know from the 12-step program, is a geographical. So we bought all of my emotional baggage came as packed luggage on the plane with me. Right. So over here we came and carried on the same dance over here. And then my sister-in-law from New Zealand came over to visit, and she had, because my father was an alcoholic, my husband's mother was an alcoholic. So you can see the generational and how we were the perfect match for each other. So because her mother had been an alcoholic and my mother-in-law, she had started going to Al-Anon, and she could see what the dysfunction of what was going on in our home, with a greater awareness, and my husband's alcoholism, my multiple addictions, work, control, trying to hold together the family, the perfect family unit. I was trying to hold it all together, begging my husband all the time to stop drinking. I went and she took me shopping and bought Melody Beattie's book, Codependent No More, and I devoured that book in one night. I was reading like my life story. So, wow. And I wasn't just on every page, I was every line. That was me. So at least then I had a reference for what was wrong with me, because what I want to tell you, Mimi, is I would go to psychologists, psychiatrists and counsellors, but they didn't really get me because I wasn't using a substance, I was running a business. It looked like I was doing all right. However, I was suffering from the same equal full-blown addiction as my husband with alcoholism. I don't see any difference. So
and it's so interesting because that it's so interesting to me that your addictions were playing out in codependency, but you mentioned all the other things too, and overworking and so I just feel like it's so important to highlight that addiction shows up in so many different ways. It's not
everywhere. I was like running around like a chook with my head cut off, overworking, running businesses, and people would say to me, you know what, Ros, I don't know how you manage 4 children and running a business. You know what I'd do, Mummy? I'd go and get another business. because I liked them saying that to me, because they were feeding me from the outside because I was so empty on the inside.
Yeah.
So I was doing that in business, no different from a heroin addict chasing another needle. That's my point. Codependency is fatal. So I carried on, and that I could then identify what was wrong with me, but I couldn't get the support I needed. I could take you on a bus ride around Brisbane, where I live, and tell you all the different places I was going to support. I might add, I had gone to Al-Anon, which saved my life, which is for families of alcoholics. And the biggest part of going to Al-Anon for me was it helped me to believe in a higher power, because I hadn't been brought up with any religion or anything like that. That was new to me. So that's what it gave. Step 1, step 2. And that's what it gave me. It saved my life, that it gave me something else to connect into. Sometimes I'd go to 3 Al-Anon meetings in a day, because I'd go to one and I'd get a little bit of relief. Then I'd go home. In those days, it was the yellow pages. I'd look up where the next one was, and I'd go to 3 in a day just to stay functioning as I knew it then. I wasn't really functioning that healthily. So, but what I was looking for then was someone to support me, like someone to hold my hand and work through and call me on my bullshit, someone to really call me on my stuff and support me in my codependency. So
in that work in Al-Anon that helped you to start to see the codependency?
More so Melody Beattie's book, more so.
Okay.
I needed someone walking beside me. I did have a sponsor, but anyway, but I went to Al-Anon for 2 or 3 years, and I have a high regard for the 12-step program. I think the 12 steps are a wonderful spiritual engineered mandate for living. I think we could all live by the 12 steps, to be perfectly honest. And just recently, last year, I saw this book called People's Anonymous, like, the book's AA Anonymous. This was People's Anonymous. So I have a high regard for that. Yes, so then I knew what was going on. I could identify what was wrong with me, but I didn't seem to be able to get well. So in the next 10 years, while my children were growing up, I would leave my husband for 5 times in 10 years. We separated and went back together. And what I want to point out there, Mimi, is that we'd separate from each other, and the withdrawal from the people addiction was so great, the pain would drive me back, no different from a person using a substance.
Okay, what did that look like for you? What was the withdrawal? What did that look like?
I was just craving to go for relief, the pain of the withdrawal. And so I was just craving. So then we'd say, well, let's try again. Let's try again. And we'd go round and round in the same circles, because I wasn't really addressing my addiction of codependency and people addiction. My husband was my drug.
So it was going back to the same person and the same
thing and the same. My husband would go, because to get relief, we were both looking for relief. So he would go, he said, I'll give up drinking and go to AA. Of course, that was what I wanted. I thought if he gave up drinking, then our family could stay together and our lives could go on. I thought that was what the problem was in the marriage. I didn't understand enough about my own, how full-blown codependent I was, and all of my multiple addictions. So that happened. He would go to AA for a little while, and then of course he'd become a dry drunk and resentful, and he didn't want to do it, and because he wasn't going for the right reasons. My point is there, we both got relief. We'd get back in the marriage, and after a month or so, all the stuff would start coming up again. So then I now was bringing up 4 children in the toxic soup that my husband and I had grown up in as well. So that went on for over 10 years. We separate, and I'm not talking separate, go and get a motel for it. We'd properly separate. for 6 months, then get back together, then separate. Like, it was topsy-turvy for my children now coming into their teenage years. So of course, what did they do? They started using substances to get relief from what was going on in the home as well.
So continuing the cycle.
Continuing, my greatest thing was I didn't want my children becoming alcoholics, and my greatest thing, and it was looming large on my horizon. So for the last 25 years, 3 of they're now adult children, have succumbed to deep addiction, still in addiction.
Wow.
And so it's been prisons, rehab, psych wards, overdoses, open heart surgery for one. One of my daughters experienced bulimia for 20 years. It's been all of those things. As it goes on generationally, it's progressive, and generationally, the addictions were deeper. So now I was there with my 3 of my 4 children, 3 that were here living in Brisbane, living with that. And the only thing I could do about that was keep focusing on my own codependency. The message I have for people out there that have children in addiction is to do the work on themselves. That's the best demonstration.
Do the work on themselves and let other people do the work on themselves, right? Like, you can't fix anyone. So
no.
So would you say that is one of the symptoms of codependency, is that we try to fix people?
I was trying to fix my husband. I couldn't, my father died and he didn't stop drinking. So I thought I'd control and stop him drinking.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
But my understanding of it, Mimi, is we want to fix out there because we're so empty in here. We want to control and fix out there.
Right. Because it gives us some sense of control.
And relief. Gives us relief. So that's been going on. I did eventually in the year, so I'll go back, but jumping around a bit, but on the year 2000, I'd gone back to my husband and been back together for about 3 months. And I was just getting sicker and sicker and sicker. Again, I didn't use substances, didn't use pills or needles, but my codependency was I was just getting sicker and sicker with it. And so I got to the stage where I had lost 12 kilos in about 2 weeks. I couldn't even keep water down. My body was shutting down.
Wow.
So
it was manifesting itself physically.
Absolutely. I was getting migraine headaches. My body was just shutting down. My sister came over on the 15th of January to my home. She knew I wasn't well. We all knew that I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't eat or drink. And she said, I don't know what to do with you. So she took me to the hospital and they put me in the psych ward at the hospital. Even the people at the hospital said, I don't really know where to put you. And I was begging, when she took me to the hospital, I was begging the doctors to let me die. Please, I wanted relief and I wanted out quick.
Wow. So it kind of sounds like it was looking like depression, like severe depression. Right.
Well, I would say it's severe addiction.
Severe addiction.
Severe, my codependency addiction. Codependency kills. And I want people to understand that if you don't start addressing it, eventually it can manifest in multiple sclerosis, autoimmune, cancer, heart attacks.
Okay, that's good. So so can you talk a little bit more about, in your experience with all the different forms of codependency that you've worked with, how else does it show up?
Well, for me, it showed up in my addiction to work, in my raging, my parenting, raging at the children. I was so out of control in my emotions. The number one reason we use any addiction is we can't control our emotions. So the first book I'd written 5 years ago was called Emotional Sobriety.
Such another important topic, because I didn't even know what that meant until I started getting further along in my own recovery, and I was like, oh, this is a different feeling. When you sorry, Mimi. That's okay. Just when you start to do the work, whatever the work is that you choose to do, then you start to experience this new kind of peace. And I think that's one of the one of the moments that I started to realize that codependency and other things were going on was like that there was something missing. Like it was a feeling that I hadn't experienced before. And it was like I was waiting for, and I still do this sometimes, like I'm waiting for something to go wrong. I'm waiting for the shoe to drop, or, and so I think when we have these moments of peace and we experience that as not normal, that's a sign.
It is. We can't, that's not our normal. We feel out of control with that as well. And I believe codependency runs underneath of all addictions. And if we don't go down and fix the codependency that's driven us to those addictions, which I believe has its genesis often in our earlier years as well, not to blame our parents, they were doing the best they could. But if we don't go down and see the codependency underneath it driving the addiction, I believe we just cross addict. From one to the other. And the codependency is real, where the foundation of emotional sobriety is. I think people have the understanding, and I certainly did as well, that if you stop drinking, your life just will change. That's all you need to do. But as you've just said, once you do that, there's other layers coming underneath it. Yes. And for me, that meant, I had my children coming up with all their severe addictions. So I couldn't go out and control them or enable them. I had to work on my own codependency to show them to be the best thing I could do would be I would support them. I said, I will support you 100% towards recovery, but not 1% towards you using that lifestyle. But then it's what I say, if people have got children in trouble, do the work on yourself and be the best demonstration. I also believe, Mimi, that by osmosis that emits energy down into them as well.
Yes, even if they're not doing the work, right?
That's right. Does seeing a difference. So just going back again, I'm jumping. When I went to the hospital that day, I knew that I could never go back to my marriage. That was it. I couldn't even, because I'd be dead. I was already dead. I really believed the next day I would have died at my home because all my organs were shutting down.
Wow.
So I knew
that was your bottom. That was your bottom then.
And there's been a few other bottoms after that as well, but that was my real. I was begging to die. And so that was the end of the marriage. So then and I knew, I would like to add here, I knew that I couldn't have any contact with my husband, none, because he was my drug. Yes,
and they talk about that in the world of this context of relationships, getting out of abusive or addictive relationships. They call it no contact. So talk about that a little bit and why that's
well. I'm quite big on that in my coaching as well, because if we can understand it if it's, say, someone is problematic with alcohol or heroin, or you can understand you can't touch it. But when it's people, especially when you've got children together, you think, oh no, we have to do it because of the parenting. I knew that I could not see my former husband, have no texts, no nothing to stay alive. So I didn't have any contact, and even my children, I would say, do not use his name around me. I didn't mix with mutual friends that we'd had. I had to stay right away, and I didn't have any contact with him for 3 years because of my addiction, not because of him.
Yeah, because that's what you needed to do to
absolutely heal. And I believe most people in relationship addiction or codependently addictive relationships or abusive relationships, I actually believe we don't need, with the domestic violence, we don't need to go too many layers deeper, Mimi, with the tragedies you hear on the news with this sort of stuff, in my opinion, to see it's a severe form of codependency.
Yeah.
and control. And so that's what I did then. And then I really had to roll my sleeves up to stay alive. And I was studying because I couldn't seem to get the right support. For me here in Australia, I was doing my own study. So it took me quite a bit, longer. I was doing, and that's really why I have the passion for doing what I'm doing now, because I feel if I'd have had that hands-on support, firm support at 23 years ago, I may not have taken so long and had such a painful journey. However, I also, on looking back, we know there's gifts in everything, that had I had that support, I might have just sailed through it, and I mightn't have quite the fire in my belly to help people like I do now, the passion.
Yeah, because you had to be ready for it too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I really, really love your book because you're giving people exercises and activities that they can do to self-reflect and find the awareness for themselves. I just think that's so important because you can lead a
horse to water.
Right. But you have to be able to discover it for yourself. And so I feel like your book really gives people the opportunity to do that. Do you have any suspicion about that this might be an issue for you, then you need to have some tools to be able to dive in and discover that for yourself. So I really love that about your book.
And that's what I wanted, Mimi. I want a resource book. I want it clear. One of the things when I was writing, I didn't want it too big because we're so kind of out of our minds. We couldn't focus on that clear, self-reflective, because people don't really, a lot of people, it's becoming better. A lot of people don't understand what codependency is, but they can kind of understand, do you feel it's your job to manage your relationships and hold families together? And are you so busy giving and doing for others that you feel there's nothing left for you? They can relate to that.
Yeah. Are you looking at the quiz?
I'm looking at the back page, just, do you fear people not liking you and approving of you? So we subordinate to them. That's how my whole life was. I'd be doing for everybody so they still liked me. So I didn't want to lose them and I wanted them to like me because really and truly inside I didn't like me.
Yeah.
So I would subordinate. I'd go outside of my values doing things. So I didn't want to lose people in my life.
Right. And you were getting your value from what you thought other people.
Yeah, my self-worth was in them. So I would be feeding them. I'll do whatever you want me to do so you still like me. Yes. And codependency is often described as the condition of the lost self or deficiency of self-love. So what we want to do is take our self-worth or where we all think we get our juice from and bring it back to ourselves from the inside out. Learn to say no to things, and getting honest and having the raw courage to put that into action. It isn't easy.
Yeah, no, it's not. And that was the other piece that I wanted to have you talk about was you talk about coming back to yourself, coming back to self. So what does that look like?
Well, for me, it was about getting honest. It was about really, really studying this topic and getting honest and having the raw courage to let go of people, places, and things in my life that were holding me in my addiction or in my sickness. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't easy. And the withdrawal, going through the withdrawal from that.
Mm-hmm.
And then starting to live a new way as you start to get on it. There is another way to live. If any of you listeners are relating to some of the questions or relating to what we're talking about, there is another way to live. I'm living proof of it. Is it easy? No. But is it worth it? 100%.
Mm-hmm. So talk about some of those real world practices.
Understanding, pulling away, get clear on your motive for why you're doing things, letting go of people that aren't serving you, letting go of friendships, even even people that like, let's talk about the way I've written the book is in different sections in all areas of life, because as we've talked about, if you're codependent in one area, you're codependent in all areas. Now, that may not show up at the start if you've got a marriage that's breaking or a relationship that's breaking. But as you clean up one area, you'll see, like you'd said at the beginning, where it's in other areas. You know, people staying in jobs that they're not happy with, that's not good for their health. I often say to people, if you start squirming on Sunday afternoon about going to work on Monday, then something needs to be looked at. It's not good for our health. We're going against our inner self. I don't say go and leave your job, but start getting honest and getting some support in to start making some changes. It may mean doing a course. It may mean looking at other avenues for yourself.
Yeah.
People are scared of change because change is very, very uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable and uncertain.
Very. And we're going into a new normal. We don't know what that's like.
Yeah. Yeah. So share with us what your life is like now.
Thank you. I'd love to. So I say no when I want to say no without shame and guilt. I'm not mean. You know, I say thanks very much for the kind invite, but it's not my cup of tea. I'd rather not go. I'm honest. People know where they are with me now. I'm honest. I have a good scaffolding in my life, as in about 5 safe people that I go to if it gets bumpy for me, and I trust their counsel, because often when our nose is against the glass, we can't see it ourselves. Yeah. So I have a good scaffolding around me and these are the things I coach and get people to put into place. I have a lot of fun. I enjoy my life. Even though my children aren't sober, I still have a wonderful life. I have a really good life. I have fun. Most people, when we become sick with addiction or codependency, we don't know how to have fun. So I have fun. I live life on my terms, not on the tail end of everybody else's string. Like I was running around like a chook with my head cut off, trying to please that one, trying to be that one, and I'll do this for this. I was just worn out, absolutely exhausted and very, very sick. I make sure that I integrate these things into my life. I want to mention there that I look after my sobriety, my emotional sobriety every day. So obviously I exercise, I eat well, I'm around people, good people that I enjoy. I do what I want, when I want, if I want, and how I want, and not in a mean way. If I'm honest to someone, that's more respectful to them. I don't tell lies. I used to say yes to going to places. Then for a couple of days, I'd be thinking up lies, how I could get out of it, and I'd tell lies.
Yeah. Well, and you know, you can tell that you're on this side of it now. You're so energetic and vibrant, and like the joy comes through in your sharing and your speaking. And so I think that's just important to point out, because that's what freedom on the other side of
freedom looks like. Freedom. That doesn't mean I don't have challenges. We all have challenges. Right. We need them to grow. But I feel free to actually be me, and I'm more direct with people, but in a kind way. I don't have to be tell lies, or it's just a whole new way of living. It's honesty, and it's freedom, and it's happiness. As I said, doesn't mean I can't have bumpy times, but I know how to address them. I know where to go. I have I wrote in the book, and I've coined a phrase called emotional intensive care unit. If something bumps me, I will put myself into emotional intensive care unit. You know, Mimi, this is heart and brain surgery we're doing. We're reprogramming all our neural pathways. And if you were in the hospital having heart and brain surgery, you'd be in intensive care. So I tell my people, build an emotional intensive care. That could be for me going to bed and crying. It could be having a bath. It could be whatever I need. Usually it's slow down, chunk it down. What do I need? What's the kindest thing I can do for myself in the next 5 minutes and the next 5 minutes? pull everything back, settle down our autonomic nervous system.
Yes.
And then I do that. And I don't get up and go, right, I've had downtime enough. I allow it to organically get up. It lifts. Once in my emotional intensive care, it's like might be going to a movie and having a chocolate dip ice cream. But I bring it all back to so that I can settle the nervous system down and then go from there, rather than spiraling on or going out and causing more deluge out there, which is what I used to do.
Yeah, beautiful. So you have actual practices that you
absolutely
keep into place on a daily basis now.
Yes, for my sobriety, my recovery, you could call it my recovery. Yeah. And I believe if we don't do that, then we can get off track. Things can get bumpy very quickly. So, and my sobriety or my recovery it's my number one value. My emotional sobriety is number one. And also another thing is I'm number one in my life now.
Yes. Beautiful.
And I don't mind telling people that, because if I'm number one and take really good care of me and look, I'm a nicer person, I'm happier, I'm a better demonstration, beneficial presence on the planet, I believe. But that's my responsibility. Our happiness is no one else's responsibility. So Absolutely. We can blame out, pull it back. No, it's not your husband's, it's not your partner's, it's not your children's, it's up to us. And don't we need more people that are vibrating and emanating, that they're enjoying and loving their life? And I do love my life.
Yeah, it's so good. It's beautiful, because there's this misconception that if you make yourself your top priority, that you're selfish, and sometimes we feel like that, like, oh, I'm being selfish by taking care of myself first. But it really is what allows you to take the power back into your own hands in your life.
And turn that on its head, take care of self, and then we can be, I'm quite a giver. I love giving, but of course in my codependency I was over giving for all the wrong reasons, which actually wasn't giving, it was trading. I'll do this for you, I want to make sure you like me. And now I actually give more authentically. I give from a different place. And I'll put boundaries around my giving. For example, just this is a couple of weeks ago, one of my girlfriends was shifting house. And I said, I'll come and help you clean for 2 hours. I want to give to her for 2 hours. The old me would have said, I'll come for a couple of days and do it. And then I'd get resentful.
Yeah.
Now, when we're giving from an authentic, honest point, it shouldn't feel like giving. It should feel like we're receiving the gift as well. It is giving, but we're getting the gift as well. So I said to my friend, I'll come for 2 hours, tell me what to do, clean, paint your cupboards, whatever. I went for 2 hours, then I left. So I got the gift of helping her without getting resentful, because that destroys relationships as well.
Yeah, that's so beautiful.
So have boundaries around what you can give, and give it. I either do things and give willingly, or I don't do it at all.
Right. So good. And that requires you to be in tune with yourself and your own needs and what you're able to give.
I was more than happy to go to for 2 hours. I loved it. We had a fun time, and so I went away feeling very fulfilled, whereas all the time I was always so empty, and then I'd get brassed off and resentful, which wasn't fair on the other people either. That's kind of abusing them. We were actually I had a client ring me this morning. She goes, actually, when we do things codependently, we're doing them for ourselves. I said, we certainly are.
Yeah.
Doing them to help the other person, we're doing, and so we feel better about ourselves.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
In that state, in our addiction state, now I do it. And if I don't feel comfortable to do something, or if I check in with myself and I'm not ready, I don't do it, because I don't want to disrespect the other person. And I don't want people to do things for me if they don't really want to.
Exactly.
I'm not about compromising, and I get a bit of flack for that. Oh, Ros, you've got to compromise. I won't compromise for anybody, and I don't want anybody compromising for me. What I mean by that is we do it willingly, or I feel like compromise to me is I'll give up something of me to do it for you. I'm not giving up anything of me. I'll give what's left. I'm filled up and I've got plenty over in the saucer. Drink from your own full cup, or whatever that saying is, fill your own cup up. And I say, don't give from the full cup, give from the saucer, the overfill. Then you don't need anything back.
Yeah. It's so good. Gosh, I feel like we could go on forever, but so share with us what it's like to work with you.
Okay. Can I just go back just one wee thing, Mimi? I just thought of, before I left New Zealand, I want to talk about the physical aspects of this codependency as well. Before I left New Zealand, I had very, very bad irritable bowel conditions. I was going to a bowel specialist. I had ulcers in my stomach, so I'd go into the hospital, they'd put the thing down and put me out. I'd check that. I had eczema all over my body. My point for this is, this stuff makes you sick. And now I have none. I'm not on any medications. I have none of all of that stuff, because I looked at the reasons that was causing these things, not just go and take some pills. And I'm not against medication. We need to do that. But I didn't just go and cover it. I've gone underneath. I have no physical symptoms at all.
Wow. Yeah.
And I still play squash. I think you call it racquetball over there. I play squash every week.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you touched on that, because I'm such an advocate and believer in that our bodies will manifest our internal illnesses. So our mental, emotional traumas and things like that will manifest themselves physically in our bodies.
Yes, our biography becomes our biology. And with the new quantum science and quantum psychology and psychiatry, Dr. Joe Dispenza, I'm a big advocate of his work and have been to his week-long retreat. Like, it's fabulous what's coming out, Mimi, because the science is proving it. And Dr. Bruce Lipton, I mean, I'm so grateful we have access to all of these people. Your mental and emotional can change our DNA, change our genetics. They say that most diseases are only at most 6% genetic. The rest is epigenetic, environmental. So we need to clean up our lives out there, and then it certainly cleans our bodies up.
Absolutely. That's why I'm such an advocate for recovery, because
I love recovery.
It's like we have to do that inner work in order for all the changes that we choose to make, and all the ways that we choose to focus on our health, and all of the things that we do in our life to try to be healthy. It's not going to work unless we really go in and address what's inside.
And I know that it can be hard work and to do it, but like you, Mimi, it's so worth it. It's such a better way to live. I'm so grateful for my recovery that I'd rather be dead than lived. I was dead, actually, sort of walking around. I'd rather be dead than lived how I was. There's a new way to live, and we want more and more people demonstrating this, and
Exactly. That's why we're here.
That's exactly why we're here. And you've given me this platform, and I'm really grateful, and I'm grateful to know you.
Well, I'm really grateful to have you on, and thank you so much for sharing, just being so real and open and vulnerable, and sharing just, every bit of your story with us, and being a light for others. And so I do want to share your book again, Recover from Codependency, Roslyn Saunders.
Yeah.
And people can find you online, correct?
Yes, my website is roslynsaunders.com.au.
Great. And I will put all that information in the notes as well.
Okay. And the book can be bought through Amazon. And I'd love any feedback or any things that if people have feedback of how I could do things better or to help more people, because I don't think that codependency is understood enough. And what got me going was I knew that there was thousands of others out there feeling like I was feeling. It's a bit like a toothache in your gut. It's kind of there and you keep putting the lid on it because it's not tangible.
Yeah.
And you know how we wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and we think these thoughts, I can't do this anymore. I can't live like this anymore. Then 6 o'clock, the alarm goes on. So we shut that off and we go out and do the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So do you work with people on a one-on-one basis?
I do.
Okay.
I work one-on-one via Zoom with people. And I'm very hands-on with them. They have a lot of access to me because as in they can text me through the week and I ring them when I can straight back just to get them over, because as we know, it's not just between the week. They get triggered in between, so I can help them over that trigger and to stop them spiraling, and they're learning each time. So that's how I work. I don't have an excessive lot of clients because I want to be totally there to get them through.
Beautiful. So you're really working closely with people. You're holding hands through their challenges and helping them to rewire
themselves. That's it. Yeah. And I ask them when they first come on to borrow my belief at the start, but then I'm about results. I'm not about going over and over things for months, sitting there talking about the same thing. I'm about, and I just emotionally, let's do this baby step to build their emotional muscle and their recovery. And I want them, they borrow my belief at the moment until they start building their own. Evidence has the loudest voice, and they need to see the evidence of the coaching working in their lives.
Sure. Yeah. So good. Well, it sounds like such valuable work that you're doing with people.
Thank you.
So
I love it.
I can tell.
Okay.
Well, thank you again. Thank you so much for saying yes. Well, you actually reached out to me, so thank you.
I did.
Thank you for coming on and sharing yourself with my community. And thank you for the work that you're doing in the world. And yeah, it's just an honor to have you on. So we'll be in touch, I'm sure. And again, I'll put all the information in the notes. And thank you all for tuning in. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing too, Mimi. Together, we all have a part in it.
Absolutely. Thank you.